Hey, this is Tom Calvin. Thanks for tuning in to Tomorrow's Legends.
You think you know the story. You've heard it 100 times. But this is not the tale that you know. For this part of the story has yet to be written. Join Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11 as they take the Waverider into the near future and check in on some old friends. This is the new adventures of Superman and Lois, as chronicled by Tomorrow's Legends.
That's right. Hello, Superfam. Welcome back to Tomorrow's Legends. We are here in Smallville following the new adventures of Superman Lois, as you just heard. And this week we are on episode 8 of season 1 called Holding the Wrench, which I actually thought was a really funny title until we saw exactly what it meant. Mm-hmm. And I am also just holding a wrench, the Flash.
I'm Harley Quinn.
And I'm X-Force 11.
Hello, Legends.
She is Gideon. Yeah. Oh my God, guys. This one, I have not been gut punched like this in a long time. Wow. All right. Well, let's get into it. We've got no news this week, so we're going to dive right into this episode, which I think is probably one of the strongest ones yet. But before we do, we've actually got a pre-show feedback email, and I'm going to let X-Force take this one. It's from Comic Geek Kev. What did he say?
Red Sun energy has been used a lot in the comics and even in live action versions, but I don't think their use of it is done well normally. I always thought of Superman's body absorbing yellow sun energy like a suntan. The longer he's exposed to it, the stronger he gets, darker the tan. Once a person is out of the sun, the tan will slowly fade. His powers shouldn't suddenly be gone under red sun. He's like a solar battery. They should diminish slowly, maybe faster if he's really using his powers a lot. Many uses in the past, like the shows, the powers pretty much vanish automatically. Just a pet peeve I've always had, but the show is still amazing. Comic Geek Kev.
Yeah, I think that was in response to us discussing it last week about the red sun, and it's a good debate to have because it's hard to tell exactly how much his powers were diminished in that scene and what they exactly meant by that. But I think it was just more of a shock because he was able to kind of fight back. I think he got hit by it, and I mean, Irons definitely knows what weakens Superman from his experience on his own planet. So maybe he had it rigged to be some type of extra powerful, red solar energy. We don't know. They didn't really explain it, but we hear you, Kev. It's I think everybody does a little differently.
Yeah, and Ken from Chicago commented about it some on Twitter as well, talking about other times that they've used it on Supergirl and things like that too. So
okay,
yeah.
Cool. Well, that answers my question because I wasn't sure if they had used it before. Awesome stuff. Let's get into our general impressions and ratings, and it looks like you're up first there, X-Force.
So I gave this 9.75 powerful Lois monologues. I love this show. The honesty in the marriage, the real-life issues, and so much more. It's powerful, and I was in tears at so many points in this episode. It was just so powerful. I absolutely loved it. But still have to give some room for it to get better because I know they can do it. This is only episode 8.
Oh, man. Yeah, 9.75. That is a record right now for this season. Wow.
It's awesome.
How about you, Harley?
I gave this 9.5. Reveals I didn't see coming. So this episode completely took a turn I don't think any of us expected, but definitely I did not expect with Lois. I mean, it was great. It was a fantastic episode for her and for John, really. I mean, they really got to develop not only their relationship, but just as characters, like so much, which I think was super important. So as a result, it felt like Superman was definitely the B story this week, but it was still, everything we got with him was still really great too. Everything we got with Clark was great. And so it's just fascinating to see how they're taking all these different storylines, but they're like all slowly coming together because they felt very separate at the beginning of the series. And now that we're essentially midway, they're all kind of slowly coming together. So I'm really excited for the back half of the season.
Yeah, I don't know if there's hardly anything we're going to disagree on tonight, because I am also giving it a 9.5 laser sights set on Jonathan. All I can say is whoa. Simply whoa. I say this show is full of Emmy-worthy performances, and then they go and push the bar way up and shoot for the Oscars. Bitsy Tulloch crushed it, and she brought me to tears multiple times. Jonathan again gets to be the focus, and we still get awesome Superman action and touching scenes for Sara and Jordan. Can this show get any better? Well, we left a little bit of room, like X-Force said, so we'll have to see. We're going to, actually, the idea I had, and I think I saw it in our feedback too, we're going to have to change our scales to a 20 rating system, just so it can keep going up and away, right? Superman and Lois is hands down the best the CW has ever done. I'm at that point now. I know we're only 8 episodes in, but these were 8 solid episodes without a single slip-up. They are so strong, and I don't think I've seen any of the other shows come even close to that. And I apologize to other shows, even Arrow, you've been ousted from the top spot in my heart. Superman and Lois reign supreme right now. They're the family drama and the action, and the way this is so grounded and real with superpowers behind it. It blows me away. I have no idea where these writers came from, but my God, they better keep them locked in for the next however many seasons we get.
Yeah, I did look last week's writer. I didn't check this one, but has some credits, including one doing an episode or two of Krypton. So, they've got some experience with that kind of genre, and it looks like the ones that I'm seeing are basically they're in the writer's room. So they may be taking an episode on fully, but they're there for the rest. So you've got that cohesion so that you do have a true writer's room where it's not just somebody coming in and doing a story. So,
well, I mean, it's the writing, it's the directing, whoever, the collective group that's putting this thing together. The CW has not had anything like this yet. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy good.
No, yeah, I agree. It's fantastic.
Well, let's transition that into our talking points. And I grabbed us a new transition clip, and I think it's perfect for this episode. That's right from the logo.
Yep.
Where are we starting first, Harley?
I want to start with Lois first.
Okay.
Because I think there's an absolute ton to talk about, and it really covers most of the show. We'll save like some bits and pieces for some of the other character sections, but I thought this would be a good place to start, so we weren't kind of dancing around her whole story.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I wanted to talk first about kind of like the narrative choice of how we get Lois's story kind of in bits and pieces throughout the episode, and especially the way they start the episode with her speaking with someone who we're not really sure who it was. I mean, I guess you kind of assume it's like a patient therapist kind of relationship, but we didn't really know that for certain. And so it was really interesting to start it like that, and then kind of setting up these little, like, almost like talking heads. They were very separate from everything else as a way to kind of like set up the tension for the story before everything actually happened that we get to see.
Yeah, and actually the actress that played the doctor there, as soon as she walked in, I recognized right away. I've only ever watched one medical doctor drama. There's Grey's Anatomy and all those other ones. I don't know if you guys know the one called Saving Hope. It was Erica Durance's medical drama, who was, our Lois Lane from Smallville. I loved that show. And in fact, that was one of the first TV shows that me and Patty Spivot watched together. And she was one of the doctors on that show. So as soon as I saw her, I was like, holy, she's got white hair now. Wow. And it was just really cool to see her.
Yeah, she. I looked her up because, she looked familiar to me. She's been in some sci-fi stuff on the Sci-Fi Channel. But where I realized I knew her from was Air Force One. She played Harrison Ford's wife, the president's wife, in Air Force One. So, I mean,
that's a ways back.
Yeah, it is a ways. There was like, she was in this that I knew and this that I knew from sci-fi and that kind of stuff. But that was kind of the one I was like, oh yeah, but it's like I said, she's got white hair in this, and she had very dark hair in that years and years ago. So,
but I'm with you there, Harley. Like, to me, the way they open this episode with Lois talking to the doctor, and then we keep getting when we eventually find out that it's in the end of the story, so we keep flashing back to see what led up to this part. It was a masterstroke in storytelling to see the end game, like I said, of the episode, and then go back to the beginning through flashbacks to see what brought Lois to therapy. And I mean, it was building up all the way through the episode to the I think we had 2, maybe 3 peak moments that it built up to, and it just wham, 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 and man, like my heart could hardly take it. This was the most powerful episode I've seen in any TV in quite a while.
Yeah. It was really good, and I like that at the first how they really had you questioning, okay, is this in the past?
Yes.
Is this present day, or is this down the road? It had you really guessing at the start, and so I really liked that. So, yeah, it was great.
Masterstroke writing, yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, well, the next kind of major plot point that we have, I mean, for Lois, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that kind of gets set up, but we kind of start Lois and John and their storyline where they're going to start exploring this RV that apparently, I don't know how it ended up with them from like John Henry Irons, but they have his RV after he goes into lockup for whatever reason. So, I mean, this sets up a whole ton of stuff that we want to talk about, but I think, Flash, you have a note that you want to talk a little bit about before we kind of dive into like each of the aspects of kind of what happened in the RV.
Yeah, well, I mean, you even just mentioned a point that I didn't even think about. How and why do they have the RV? Well, I don't think General Lane, I don't think the military even knows about the RV. I think it's only Lois that knows.
Oh, so maybe like Superman just sort of like picked it up and brought it home.
Yeah, like Chuck, and they hid it in their barn, obviously. So
yeah,
I
guess
think
so.
That's what I think happened there. But I like the way this begins. It shows them fixing the truck, and I think that's somewhere in the notes here. But it shows them fixing the truck, and poor Jonathan's standing off to the side, feeling kind of useless. And I like that he asks if he can help her, because he kind of sees that she's going to go do something that he is very capable of being able to lend a helping hand with, because obviously, Dad and Super Brother there, he can deal with the truck, and he wasn't. He's just like, he's standing there holding the wrench, and we've all been in that position, just feeling kind of dumb, like I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I just like that he was, I don't know if the word comfortable is enough. He just felt like, oh, Mom, I can come help you, like, because he wants to help, he wants to feel useful, and it was cool. And then the fact that she acknowledged, you could see it in her face when he asks, she looks at him with this big smile. Well, yeah, of course, come on. Like, I think she recognized and acknowledged that he needs something to do to feel part of this.
Yeah, that was really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they kind of go on this mission together to kind of explore everything, and they step in, and immediately the AI asks for authorization and recognizes her as an authorized user, and that kind of blew me away. Yeah, I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
How's that? Yeah.
I hear you. That was really interesting to me, because that just opens up so many more questions. Like, how long did Irons have the AI, and how long did he let it call him Luther? all before Lois died? I mean, to me, it doesn't make any sense. Like, if she was already gone, like, why would he have her as an authorized user? Because to me, especially to someone who we're assuming knows about the multiverse, wouldn't that be like an obvious security flaw? So that sort of just brought up a lot of questions to me. Like, why is Lois really an authorized user?
Yeah.
Well, I've got a lot of questions too, but I think as I was typing and writing and thinking about it, I think I came to the answer at the end, so I'm going to throw my questions that you probably had too, and then I'll give you, I think, the solution. So I was also super curious here, because one of the things I'm thinking about is this RV, because I thought Luther flew here in his spaceship, and then he bought the RV, and that's what he's been driving around. But the fact that it's decked out with the AI and all the tech and everything, I'm wondering if the RV is from his Earth. Did he throw it on the spaceship and bring it with him? That was one question I had, because I don't think he has the time or the resources to go and soup up an RV the way he has. I don't know. That was just a question.
Well, getting to that, I think he does, because he is an engineer and a builder. Between he and his daughter, they took something that Luther designed and made it better. And, engineering and design, weapons design is kind of what he did. So, we don't truly know how much time he had in between things going on. I think he's got the skills enough to do it, because I don't, why would you load, if you're in the midst of battle, why would you load an RV in there? But I think he's just got the skills. Now, the timing may be convenience to the plot, but I think he's got the skills to build it, but we'll see.
Okay, well, that's a decent enough answer, but here, my next question is, if the RV isn't from his Earth, then, like, why would it have Lois as an authorized user if it's not? If he bought the RV here, why would he program it to be authorized Lois, unless it did come from his Earth? Or is it just the AI
I think it's just the AI.
So okay, so now my next question is, did Lois know about it and use it with it? This is if the RV was from their planet. Did Lois know about the RV and the AI? Did she use it with him to keep watch on the Kryptonians of their Earth? Like, we don't know how involved she was with him in battling the Kryptonians. I mean, we know she was reporting on them and she was trying to warn her fellow Earthlings, but we don't know where her involvement was in the battle. But here's what I think the answer to this whole problem is I think because Irons was married to Lois back on their planet, I bet you he programmed the AI to accept Lois as an authorized user because she was his wife. And in case anything happened, in case there was any emergency and he was no longer able to help her or save her or whatever, she could then use the AI. The AI could help her and save her or whatever. And I bet you that's what it was. He pre-programmed it in emergency purposes.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd go with that for sure. It just feels really funny to me that he went to the trouble of, like, adding user profiles to the AI, like his wife, but still allowing it to call him Luther and assume that he was Lex Luthor. It just when clearly it was as simple as erase Luther's profile, call me John Henry Irons or whatever that he does in this episode. I was just like, if it was that easy, dude, why didn't you do this like forever ago? Anyways, it struck me as funny. It's not really a nitpick. I found it very amusing.
Well, I mean, we don't, because they never explained it any further. It could just be that maybe he was under the assumption that if it thought he was Luther, it would obey his commands, and he let it be that way. Like, or he was using it as a way to hide his identity. He's running around pretending to be Luther, and that just made it easier to keep it that way. Who knows? True. They didn't really open that one up, but it's a good point though you make, Carly.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So in the midst of this, they learn the truth that this is John Henry Irons and that he had a daughter and he was married to Lois. So, I mean, I loved how that they were revealing this to those two at the same time Clark's learning. I really enjoyed that. And I think, I put down, as I was taking notes here, it's going to make it harder for her to be objective. And I think that was very early on when I was taking those notes. But it really adds into the issues that she's working through in this episode. And I just really appreciate the writing. They did a great job of having this point revealed to both people at the same time.
Yeah, and then the look on both their faces as they realize what it is they're looking at. Now, that was shock. I mean, both of them portrayed shock so well, and I can't imagine seeing something like that. Like, totally opposite of what what you've known for years, and what's true to your heart, and you're looking at this that looks like your doppelganger, and they're leading a different life, and I just can't imagine what that would do to your head and to your emotions. But what it does for Lois, I think, is it leads her to understanding Irons and his motivations better, and I think that's why, as we get to the end of the episode, both her and Clark seem to understand why he was doing the things he was doing, and it leads to them being a little more accepting and forgiving, and essentially letting him go on his way, and hoping to be, allies in the end of it all.
Yeah, I think it definitely gave them a way to connect, and I do agree with the way that it was shot, how it was cut with the scenes between Clark learning the same information as her and John were learning about it. So yeah. I really thought that was a very cool choice.
Yeah.
And I love the scene immediately following that they immediately debrief with each other, and she's sending him and the DOD the information from the RV. But just their call together to back and forth and checking in and checking on how each other are doing in light of this is very touching. I mean, that scene just really make you feel lived in, that you're a part of that marriage because of how you're seeing them really be in tune and communicate with each other.
Yeah, and that's a good point to express what we've been trying to say for a few episodes, is that this show is showing us the progress, the process even, of everything, whether it's the process of Lois going to figure things out as a reporter. It's showing us the process of how this relationship works its way through problems, and we don't just see something happen and then all of a sudden they're fixing it. We're like, well, how did you guys get from there to there? Like, where was the talk? Where's the discussion? This show it's taking the time to show us everything, and that gives it so much more depth and allows us to really connect with these characters and grow with them and understand the relationships to a level that feels real and feels organic and natural. And it's amazing that the depth this writing goes, that they can show us just these little connections, but it means so much without you even thinking about it. It just connects everything so well.
Yeah, it does. And that leads into, a little bit later into the scene with the counselor, where we find out why that name is so important. Because she and Clark were pregnant and fairly far along as far as the picture looked, and named the girl Natalie. And to know that, okay, here she is, she's seeing this girl who was lost on that earth and saying, oh my goodness, and because she lost and in a different way, oh my gosh, it was just so powerful. And so I really give the writers and the crew and Bitsy especially, but them just the bravery of addressing something so powerful, so raw, that affects so many people in such a way that honors that, and just it was not pandered to, but it was powerful.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't see this coming at all. It was a complete shock, like jaw on the floor moment for sure. And powerful is right. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful story element. It's an unusual one because it's very difficult to do justice and do properly. And so I think it was brave of them to make that story choice, and I think they knocked it out of the park. But I mean, when it comes to like what Lois as like a character is feeling, like I kind of get it. Like I understand her fear, and it's a super powerful motivator. I mean, even if you don't want it to be, I mean, it does. It always, especially like as a parent, it's always like in the back of your head as much as you try not to let it be there. And so we got to see just how deep her fear goes, and we learned she never processed losing her third child, which mind you was over a decade ago at this point. And it just all came flooding back in this episode. And so it was incredibly well done, I will say.
That was such a tragic surprise. This show is not scared of diving into something so heavy and so sensitive, like you were trying to say there, Harley. I'm sure this subject matter is going to affect many viewers that have gone through that kind of awful experience, and it hit me. I've never experienced something like that, but it hit home so hard, and it's because of Bitsy here. Her simply powerful performance when telling the doctor about what she's feeling, that moved me to tears both times I watched it equally. And it's such a deep and crazy connection to have with Irons himself. I mean, the tying the multiverse together with similarities like that is what's going to allow them to all understand each other and hopefully eventually work things out. And I think that maybe we'll still lean on my theory that they will eventually team up and they will fight the war together. But I cannot shake how strong Bitsy was here. I did not see that coming. I didn't see the surprise coming, but I didn't see her pulling a performance like that. I mean, that the scene where she's angry and yelling at Jonathan in the kitchen, which is coming up, and then the scene with talking to the doctor. It's just, oh my God, like it's breathtaking type of performance where you don't blink and you're just in sheer awe of what she is doing on screen. Yeah, amazing.
So this really, I mean, we've been talking about Jonathan all along, but this kind of gets into discussing him a little bit more. He's working with his mom. He's trying to find his place on Team Kent. And he's learning and leaning into his mom's skills. But this leads into him having the emotional stress of learning what happened to his mother and actually seeing the footage, and then the physical threat of harm when he's breaking into the armory there. And Jordan just does such a great portrayal of laying these emotions out. We've talked about his performance all season long, but this was really an episode for him to shine, and I just really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you say Jordan, you mean the actor that plays Jonathan. His real name is Jordan.
Yeah.
Which is confusing in and of itself. Yeah. I definitely had to read that twice. Which is hilarious. But he gets himself into a world of trouble this episode. He definitely did not realize, I think, what he was getting himself into at all. I think, he decides he's not going to listen to Lois, right? She's like, I'm not ready to go back in the van. And he's like, well, okay, I'm just going to go snoop around. I want to see, I thought he wanted to see what he could learn. And he later tells us that he's trying to find a way to protect himself, that I don't know if he necessarily went looking for weapons at the start of it, but then when he discovered them, I think it kind of got his brain going. But I mean, through all of it, I feel for the kid, because he's he feels he's not being helpful all throughout the beginning of the episode, and then him and his mom see some crazy things, but then he ends up doing more harm to himself, mentally and physically, because he keeps watching the footage which means he actually witnesses Lois's death. So he actually watches a version of his mother die, which has to be incredibly traumatic. And then, of course, the big scene is when he almost gets himself killed because he's not an authorized user because he didn't exist in the other universe. So it's a very tense set of scenes where, that's all happening.
Oh my! I mean, and even just to throw a light note on it, that like when you said he almost got killed by the murder mobile, as Lois put it. But actually, just to add, because you pretty much said what I was going to say here, Harley, but to add to it, I actually also think that he was trying to feel useful, like he was in the beginning with fixing the truck. He was trying to feel useful here because he has no powers. And neither does his mom. So he kind of figures that he can mimic her and go snooping around looking for answers and clues while she's busy, which makes himself valuable. He feels valuable. And, if he finds something, then that's good. But like you were saying, I think when he saw the weapons, he got excited and realized, oh, this could actually help me. But I don't think that was what he was after to begin with. That wasn't his intent, was to find a weapon. I think he was looking for clues and looking for answers. And he came across the weapons, and that got into his head, like you were saying. Yeah. And I also want to just mimic what you guys were saying. I think the actor had done such a fantastic job this episode. He had such a good episode. He got to express his emotional range beyond being a jock, because that's all we've really seen him being, is being kind of a tough guy jock with a little bit of attitude. Even though, I mean, he's had some nice scenes with him and Jordan where he's a really good brother, but beyond that, we haven't got to see him stretch his range, really. And this was amazing for him. It was scary to see him in that near-death predicament when Lois couldn't get to him. I mean, that was a close, edge-of-seat, oh, crap moment, because like the seconds were ticking down, and Lois is banging on the door. She can't get through. He's got like 7 seconds left, and she gets the little beeper out, and she's freaking out, like, Clark, get here now. And he arrives there with 2 seconds to spare. It's scary. I was legitimately scared that we were going to see Jonathan get hurt really badly here, and Superman wasn't going to make it in time. And my heart was racing. It was insane. What a crazy scene. Yeah, no, I agree. It was a completely crazy scene, and it leads into an equally crazy scene. Oh. So shortly after. Yeah, so shortly after we get the big confrontation, the thing that Lois, through her therapy sessions, has been alluding to all episode. Yeah, I just introduced. I love how that progressed. Like we saw what happens, and then we go back to Lois at the doctor's office, and the doctor's trying to get out of her. What were you angry at? Who was it? What did you say? And it just builds up to this moment, and she's been slowly telling her story, and it builds up to this moment in the kitchen that you're about to talk about. Yeah, and we still don't even get the final reveal, which we can talk about that a little bit as well. But this was just this whole thing is just such a tough situation, and especially because at the time that we see it in the episode, I mean, we agree with Lois about how she's been setting it up, like you said, Flash, about how she's worried that she's done like just irreparable damage to her relationship, with someone that she loves, and that there's nothing that she can do about that. And we kind of agree, like, it seems out of character. It seems like it came out of left field. Like, we don't really understand why it's happening. Now, of course, that we learn later in the episode, her reaction is completely just a manifestation of her own guilt, which is even more powerful because we hadn't learned yet about the miscarriage. We hadn't learned yet about the tie-in with Natalie. Not that specifically. So, it was just so hard but powerful to see because she just loses herself in the storm of emotions, and it was just, it was hard to watch because you could put yourself in John's shoes, but you could also really put yourself in hers too, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it was so powerful. And that's well said, X-Force, because I was on the fence on the whole thing. I understand both sides of it, and at the time I was thinking, man, he doesn't need to hear all of that as it was happening. He didn't deserve what she dished out to him, because I thought she kind of went overboard, just like she admits in therapy. But like you were saying, Harley, she was also expressing her fear of losing another kid, because Lois likes to be in control, and she struggles when she's not. And this was her losing her cool because she was completely out of control. She could not get to him. She could not save him. And if it wasn't for Superman, she would have lost her son. And that pushed her over the edge. She couldn't contain the emotion from that.
Yeah, and the only reason that he was there in the first place was because she allowed him to help. So I can definitely see it from her side as well. It's very, very, very tough situation. Parenting is hard, y'all. All right, so I have one more point, and then if we feel like we've really missed anything between Lois and John, we can come back to it. But I think we've got the majority of it, and we have quite a lot of other things to get through. But the last point I wanted to bring up was Lois saving Superman, and I think I put this in the wrong section. I think I just combined Lois and John's story in my head, so we're going back to Lois. But I just loved the way that she got to kind of like talk John Henry off of the ledge, so to speak. It was just a really great scene, and I enjoyed watching it.
Go ahead, X-Force.
I was just about to say, I love the way that she cuts through and takes it to the point of, listen, I know what you're going through. You're masking anger. You're masking your guilt with, your anger with guilt. And, it was just so powerful to see her do that without having to say, listen, this is why I know, but just to cut through and make that. So it was really powerful.
And it makes sense, too, that she's able to do that because he's in an emotional state right now. He's looking at Superman as his Superman. That's all he sees is the black suit. And when he hears her talking to her, he's hearing his Lois. And I bet you she's very similar to his Lois because she's got the same similar wisdom that she probably has. But I think this scene also shows that he gives her that small moment of trust. He actually listens and believes her and stops. And whether it's because he's hearing his Lois or not, or she's breaking through to him, whatever it is, it's just that moment of trust where he listens to her and allows himself to be taken away again. And I just think it's cool that she saves Clark this time. It's not always Superman running to her rescue. It shows that she can be the hero too and come to his rescue. He's not completely invulnerable to all situations and scenarios. Yeah. And that's cool. They are keeping Lois on equal ground as Superman when it comes to who gets to be either the brave one, the smart one, the hero of the moment, whatever. It's very cool how they're balancing those two out.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, with that, let's roll on into Clark and Superman's story points. Now, I mean, the majority of his story is kind of wrapped up with other characters, so I think we've kind of covered some of the major stuff with Lois and John already and touched on that. So let's bring up a few points that were more like Clark or Superman heavy.
Yeah. So I really like the point of when John Henry is confronting Superman and saying that he is like his Earth Superman. And I'm thinking, not really, because he's married to Lois, and that's huge. We don't know anything. We kind of get the saying that Clark says, well, he's just like me except with a different suit, but we really don't know that much about who Superman is in that Earth, but we do know he does not have Lois to ground him like this one does. And I like the point that they did not reveal that to Irons yet, because it felt like that would have been a too easy of a solution, and listen, I understand because I am married, so I like that fact, but I think John Henry is just missing the point that Superman there did not have Lois or somebody like Lois to ground him, and we still don't know much about that version of Superman.
That is such a good point, X-Force, because in that moment when this was happening, I thought for sure she was going to tell him.
I did too.
And then I realized, well, wait a second, there's other soldiers in the room. If it was just her dad, Superman, and Irons, I bet you she would have said it. But because there was other soldiers there, she didn't. But I was waiting for her to say it. And like you said, that maybe would have been an easy way out. But I have a feeling somewhere down the line, in order to gain his trust fully, she will reveal that to him. And maybe the stuff that you keep bringing up, that because Superman of his Earth never had a Lois, maybe that'll help Irons understand, okay, well, I understand my Lois and the kind of woman that she is. Now I get it. If she's with Superman on this Earth, it makes sense that he's going to be good. So hopefully. But yeah, and then to add to what you were saying too, I had this point under our Irons section, but we're actually talking about Superman and Clark here. So what Irons says, though, is that he says when the other Kryptonians arrived on his Earth, Superman joined them. And then he also said that he chose his people over Earth's. And throughout this whole season, we've seen Irons arguing that Superman here will change, just like he did on his Earth. So there's all these little elements that are adding up to me wondering if Superman on his Earth was also good as well. Because to me it sounds like maybe he was, because of the things he says. He's like, he didn't change until the Kryptonians showed up. He'll change. Your Superman will change just like mine did. Like, he keeps giving all these little tidbits that makes me think Superman was actually on the right side of things. But because he doesn't have his Lois, it was easier for him to be swayed. I don't know. I'm betting that in the flashbacks we will eventually get this puzzle built to piece by piece even more.
Yeah, I've got a theory. Well,
okay.
While the two of you have been talking, my little brain over here has been working. So
Professor Harley's in the house.
I'm going to try. All right, so we saw in last episode that, I mean, we've seen it before, but it just kind of dawned on us because I think I brought it up in our discussion of our last episode. The point of Superman wearing a black suit. He only wears a black suit when he needs it for, like, regeneration purposes or whatever. So the most prominent times we've seen it is after the death of Superman, or after a death of a Superman. So what if they could, because Nat and Lois and Irons, their family, seemed genuinely surprised when their Superman that they know rose up and with the Kryptonians was like destroying the city. They seemed genuinely shocked by that. So what if Superman died for any number of plot points that he could have died from, and he was resurrected with X-Kryptonite?
Ooh.
Tying him into...
By Morgan Edge on that Earth.
Tying him into Edge's army, which would be why he sided with the Kryptonians in the first place.
Now whoa, you haven't come up with a good one like that in a while, Harley. Holy, mind blown. That could be a very good, wow.
Yeah, I like that. I like it a lot.
That would tie in the Edge storyline and make everything make sense. That would connect it all.
It would.
And like you said, the black suit is when he only regenerates after dying, so yeah. Wow. Good call. Because Irons knows all about Morgan Edge as well, and that's why he's here to stop him on this Earth. So
exactly. So maybe that's the missing piece. Maybe that's the piece he's missing. Clark didn't, or Kal-El didn't really side with the Kryptonians. When he was resurrected, he was changed, essentially. Maybe he's not even really Kal-El.
I'm going to give you one of these because my mind was just blown.
Nice.
To steal from the Mandalore. Wow.
All right.
Good.
Well, with that, why don't we roll into, speaking of Kryptonians, this confrontation at the DoD. So I did not see this coming, for the record. So I was wondering if the two of you were really shocked that Rossetti turned out to be a Kryptonian. I was super shocked by it, and I immediately start thinking, well, now how far is Edge's reach? Like, who else does he have?
Yeah, it just really shows how powerful Edge is and how tempting the power is, because Rossetti was third generation military. I mean, it's going to take a lot for him to get swayed and to see, okay, this is a threat, and wanting to take up that power. So I was completely blown away.
Yeah, like the way I wasn't shocked that it happened, but I was totally caught off guard and surprised by it. Like, I mean, it makes sense when you look at what happened. It makes sense. I didn't see it coming, but when you realize that he's one of Morgan Edge's guys, it's crazy. It makes sense, but man, just completely out of left field that something like that he had a guy in that deep. And I think we're going to talk about that later. But I just thought it was such a cool scene when he grabs that enormous guy, and I forget what the guy's name was, but he looked like he was like 6'7" or something. Just this gigantic human being, and he tosses him around like a rag doll. And after I was like, wow, this is such a cool action scene. It reminded me of Terminator 2 when Arnold and the Liquid Terminator were throwing each other around in the back hallways of the shopping mall. It was the exact same scene. Bang, bang, bang into the walls. But I just had to laugh at that actor, that giant human being of an actor, had to have hated that scene. He's a giant human being, and he's being tossed around by a man half his size. He must have been like, why did I agree to this role? I'm looking bad. It makes me look bad. But then what, to me, I think was even worse was the surprise that it shows, as I was just saying, how deep Edge's infiltration goes now. That, to me, it was very shocking as well when you start to think about it, because if he can get someone that far into the DoD military, you know, in the ranks and stuff, that just shows the amount of power and reach that Edge has. And I don't know if it's money that gets him that far or manipulation or what, but it just shows how far in he can reach to get somebody in that close. I mean, that guy was right in there with General Lane, and it's crazy. That to me was just as shocking.
Yeah.
No, I hear you. Like I said, they're weaving the stories slowly together. And those weapons, like, we get to see them in action. I mean, we can talk a little bit more about like the reasoning and the why and the how behind how these weapons were created when we get to General Lane. But the fighting elements here were very interesting, and I liked this scene. Like, I thought it was pretty well choreographed. I'm not a choreographer, clearly, but I thought it was pretty cool. And we got to see all these like different kinds of kryptonite weapons. It was insane, like what was contained in this lab, and they only used like 2 of the things. So
yeah, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got kryptonite gas, we've got kryptonite spears, we have kryptonite bullets, and there's a bunch of other things we hadn't seen yet, but we've seen a lot of them now. And I want to highlight again, I brought it up last week, that Superman can fight through some of it as long as he fights back fast enough in the beginning before the kryptonite really starts to take effect. He might be able to get out of it, but again, I think it's a level of how much they hit him with will determine how weak it makes him. And I think the gas, because you saw later in the fight, he was actually holding his breath. So he was able to fight through it. So I just love that they keep showing us that it's going to take a little bit more than just a little bit of kryptonite to take him down, which is so different than what we've seen before, and I love it. And what was the other point you said, Harley, that I wanted to touch on? I just lost my train of thought. Dang it.
I don't know. I was talking about choreography.
The choreography.
On that.
Nothing to nitpick. This show has nailed it. That the physics of the way the bodies move and fly around and the fighting. And what I loved about this scene is Superman did get weakened, and then when he ripped the guy's face off, it also weakened him, and it brought them down to almost human level, and they were just throwing normal punches and normal hip checks and whatever back and forth. So it was really neat to see Superman brought down to a level and just be throwing normal fists and have to fight through it. I thought that was cool too. They did a good job. So I got a funny point here, because I think it was Jeff Childs on the Facebook page, and he asked a question, and I laughed and laughed, and when I realized he is so right. When Superman, in the very beginning of the episode, he's hanging out with the boys fixing the truck, and he gets called in. He flies off in his civilian clothes. He's wearing his jeans, his shirt, and his bomber jacket, whatever. He flies off, and he arrives at the DOD as Superman. And Jeff had asked, "Oh, does he just change in midair or something?" And I just started laughing. I'm like, I just got this image of Superman stripping down naked, flying through the clouds. Nobody's gonna see me up here. Put on my Superman suit and keep going. Like I couldn't help it. I just started laughing with that image in my head.
That's very funny.
Before we get out of this section, I do have a small nitpick.
Okay.
And so he flies off to go save Jonathan. And because he hears the distress call, and he hears Lois calling Clark, not Superman, calling for Clark. Right. We know these Kryptonians, we know Lar has super hearing, but they have super hearing, so shouldn't Rossetti have heard the same thing? Because that's on the frequency that they can hear, and so shouldn't by this point Lar and some of the other ones know that Clark is Superman at this point? I know that's a kind of plot device, but we've seen her have the super hearing, not necessarily some of the other ones. But
he might not have developed it yet. Yeah, and I mean, if Lois is in distress and she's just calling Clark, even if Lars hears it, she might not. Okay, so Lois is calling for her husband. What's the big deal? I think if Lar was in the same room as Superman and she hears Clark, and he takes off, that would be the connection. She would be like, oh. So maybe that's their way out of it. But yeah, it's funny. They might. I mean, it's an emergency situation, but they might slip up like that sometime. And I mean, it's not like people haven't figured out Superman is Clark. It has been figured out before. I mean, Lex Luthor knows it, so there's a chance.
That's funny.
All right, back to the storyline. So we've got Jordan and Sara, and I just really love that Jordan is encouraging her to overcome her fears and to he's promising to be there for her, and it turns out that he is needed, and he has to overcome some of his fears of playing the piano and performing in order to do that. And I just really loved them in this scene.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think these scenes were very cool, and I'm glad that he was able to kind of get up there and perform with her. I love the performance. I thought it was great. Very well done.
Well, and it's funny that you bring this scene up, because if you think about how much was going on in the episode and the stakes that were there, in any other TV show, in any other episode, these scenes would have felt like a jarring distraction, taking us away from the really strong stuff that was happening. But this scene, they did it just right. It was super sweet, and it was endearing, and it felt good. And I think what was so cute about it is when they actually were up there singing and playing piano together, the song they sing, if you listen to the lyrics, it's actually kind of written about them. Which I thought it perfectly describes their relationship with each other. And then why I liked it is because they're up there on stage together, helping each other get through the anxiety of this whole thing of being up on stage in front of people, because they both suffer from anxiety, and they're able to be there for each other and strengthen each other. So it was really, really cool. And yeah, that the actress playing Sara, man, that girl can sing. What a voice! Her performance to me was better than the Legends Future musical reality show musical performances that we saw, by leaps and bounds. She sang way better than even Arzari did. She blew it off it was awesome. She blew the socks off of everybody that was there, I think.
Yeah, I really appreciated that they knew that. I'm still not sure if I'm pronouncing her first name, Indy. They're using her singing skills and Alex, his playing ability, piano playing ability of really kind of realizing how good they are and putting it in there. So I really appreciate that they're kind of encouraging those talents, as we've seen in other CW shows where they realize we got folks that can really sing or play, and let's incorporate that. But they did it really well. So
yeah. I just think it's cool that a lot of these shows, and the CW's been good at that. They acknowledge that these actors have other talents, and they're allowing them to use them in the show and have it be part of the storyline, which I think is just cool. Yeah, I think I would pronounce her name Indy Navarrete. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
So,
yeah.
Well, we've kind of dwelt. We're going to talk a little bit more about some more of the Cushings. So we've got Lana telling her husband that the program is full, and I said that's going to come back to haunt her, and it did by the end of the episode. Oh my goodness! It didn't take long.
Yes. So I'm really glad that they're actually not dragging this out. But what surprised me is it seems like he bought what Lana was telling him, which in some ways is kind of a shame for his family because it sends him off the deep end and he goes into a spiral. But it actually is going to protect him in the long run. But if he ever does figure out the truth and figure out that Lana is completely lying to him, it's going to blow right back up in her face.
Yeah, I think it's going to come to a head when I think it's going to come to a head, and he's going to get upset enough and take the position that gets him the Kryptonian upgrade. And I think this is just leading. The fact that she did this put a wedge in it when it's going to be a big mistake. I think he is going to get pushed to taking the upgrade, and so it's going to tear their family apart. I think something's going to happen there. It's going to be part of the not everything can have happy endings in the show, and I think one of the bad outcomes of that is going to be watching this family break apart. Yeah. I have a feeling.
Yeah, and the weight's on her. You can see that, and one of the extended scenes was of Lar congratulating the other candidates, and really she makes a point of them moving on. This is a step towards their perfect selves, and Lana overhears that, and we talked about that regret because she's the one that chose them, but she's realizing she's protected Kyle from that, but for how long? And so, yeah, and Lar knows that she heard that, so it's gonna come crashing down soon. So,
yeah, well, because Lar is suspicious of everything, and Lana didn't quite play it right. She sneaks up to the printer to pretend like she's working, and Lar figured out what she was doing, so it's gonna. Yeah, well, Lana might get herself in trouble too. You never know. Maybe we'll see Kyle get the superpowers and then see that Lana's in trouble, and he turns a leaf and ends up saving her and ends up fighting alongside Irons and Superman. 3 against the Kryptonian army. We don't know.
Yeah, don't know. Well, talking about Kyle, we've talked about this. I love that we see Kyle and Sara bonding and connecting, and we get the scene of him encouraging her to try out, and then later we see him bringing her sheet music to every musical and encouraging her and being there and starting to work out. And I like the fact that she brings up, in groups it's okay, but it's being there by herself, and she talks about her stage fright and how she faked food poisoning when she had to do a solo, and I really appreciate him encouraging her in that, and that just made it sad later.
I was gonna say this whole scene was great, and I loved it, and I loved the two of them bonding, but it just made me so sad because he gets this quote bad news from Lana, and I just feel bad that he can't really get over himself for just a few hours to support his daughter. I mean, unfortunately, Sarah's not gonna make the same mistake again. She's not gonna let him in anymore. I mean, this was kind of, I think, for her, the final straw.
Which might lead to him wanting the superpowers. If he's lost his daughter and his wife is lying to him, he's got nowhere else to turn to but say, all right, Mr. Edge, like, yeah, give me what you got. Like,
yeah.
You know, I'll prove my family I'm worth something or whatever. I just see him going that way because he's, as much as he's a good guy, he leads the fire department. He's got a bit of that macho ego kind of thing going on where it's going to get him in trouble eventually. But I think, like you guys said, I think the first half of the episode he had such good father moments, and he was pushing her to go for her dreams, and it gives us just a little bit of, like, why does he have a whole box of musicals? What kind of a nerd was he back in the day? Like, he plays music and he has sheet music, so it gives us that little peek into his past maybe, and that's all of that just builds up to why it sucked so hard that he didn't show up for her, like you said, Harley. He couldn't get past his own crap to just be there for his kid, which is what parents are supposed to do. Put your stuff aside, be there for your kids, because that's. But
and I think this episode really showed me that he and Sara are so alike with their anxiety and how that they deal with things differently. He deals with it with drinking, where she was doing drugs and that kind of stuff, but they're so similar in some ways that they just butt heads, and it's just so hard to see when you've got two people that are so similar and they could really connect, and he could say, okay, this is how I've done it wrong, don't do it this way, and yet it's not being used that way, and that just makes it all the harder.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, are we ready to move on to Sam Lane? We can kind of wrap up the other half of this kryptonite storyline.
Yep.
So we learn what Project 7734 is all about. And wow, Lane has gone way beyond hoarding the kryptonite. Now he's using this project to completely weaponize it. And as we learn, it's just like it was on Iron's Earth.
Yep, but I have to say, I was watching him closely this episode, and I'm getting this feeling that they're starting a slow redemption arc for Lane here. They steered him away from being the bad guy this episode by having him explain the whole thing to Superman, that it's his job to always be prepared for the what-ifs. Because if he's not doing it by choice, because he expresses, I don't want to do this, but it's my job. I have to do this just in case. And it's not because he doesn't trust Clark. And I think because he's doing his job and explained it in the right way this time without being angry, without being confrontational about it, Clark kind of nodded in acknowledgement of that. And then it led to them sharing info in the end, and I think starting a slow building of trust again. They've broke each other's trust without really meaning to, but I guess Clark didn't really do a lot, but I think they're working towards fixing this. Because if they both see a war is coming and their planet's at stake, as long as they're working together to save it, then I think they'll end up allies. So I'm not 100% that they're gonna turn Lane back. I think it's gonna come to what he. If the Kryptonians arrive and he sees Clark doing something, maybe he catches Clark on video trying to talk to them, and that makes him go, uh-oh, nope, I can't trust you. He's talking to him. Let's just kick their butts. But, there might be something that makes him switch back. But right now, this episode, they steered him away from the last few where we thought, oh, I hate this guy.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the talk that he and Clark had about whether to bring Lois in or not, and dealing with John Henry, and just the both of them realizing the strengths that she has, and just how personal this situation is. So I really like that there's that understanding between them of just how powerful it is, and that Lois is, and the respect that they both have for her, and I like that scene between the two of them.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, well, I have a few points on John Henry Irons. We can the few things that we haven't really covered. These are specifically related to him. So first thing is, we see his flashback of him leaving, or so I assume, leaving his Earth. And is it just me, or did it look like he was flying straight into a crisis wave, or the crisis wave, that red light?
Yeah, that's the thing that I thought about too, because I'm like, he could have been flying into a red sun, because that's then Kal-El would have come off because he was getting but I mean, that's the first thing that came into my mind too, is like, okay, he's riding into the crisis wave somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering about the whole thing because it seemed like Irons, it seemed like he knew what he was doing. He was on his ship trying to get away from the attack. Did he know where he was going? Like, it seemed like he did. He was programming things in the ship's panel there, and he was telling it, keep going, let's go, and Superman was trying to stop him, and it just seemed like he knew what he was doing and where he was going. But if that was the crisis wave and he knew about it, how would he know what the crisis wave was? That's my question. Because, like I said, he knew what he was doing, he knew where he was going, but how would he know? Or was the crisis wave, did he think of something else? I don't know. Or was he just flying away from the planet and the wave happened to come at that exact same time? That would be just crazy circumstances, that he's trying to escape his planet and the crisis wave shows up, because we saw that's what it did during the crisis event. The wave just showed up instantly and wiped planets out. So there could have just been some uncanny timing there. But if it was, then that means people can survive that wave, although like his ship was pretty darn tough, I thought. It withstood Superman's hits and his heat vision and then some more hits. So I don't know. I'm confused because it's a tough one to figure out. But I was so surprised that they actually showed him leaving, because there's a gap missing right now. We saw him and his daughter working on something, and then that was the last thing we saw, and now he's leaving the planet. Okay, well, why is he leaving this planet? What's his plan? Is he escaping because everybody's dead and he's the last one and he's getting out of there? Or is it because he seems like he knows what he's doing and where he's going, that he's heading out do something, to get something and come back later to fight Superman? We have a bit of a gap there that we need filled in now.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of questions surrounding that. But yeah, no, it just, for me, the first thing that popped up was, that looks an awful lot like the crisis wave. So curious and curiouser. Well, the other point that I have is, it seemed to me that we get the reveal in this episode that Natalie is also dead. So my question is, do we think that was a result of the Kryptonians or of Crisis? If that was a crisis wave. Yeah,
and I'm thinking, I kind of think it's Crisis, because I think it's kind of Crisis because I think if John had lost both his wife and his daughter to Superman directly, I think he would have brought it up, and I think he would have not let this thing go as quickly, because yes, there's that loss, and she may be lost because of the after effects, he thinks, of Superman, but I don't think Superman did to her what he did to Lois on that Earth. So, but that's my theory at the moment.
Yeah, and this continues what I was saying earlier. For a second there, I thought maybe it's not the crisis wave, because if it's not, maybe it's just a portal that Irons opened up. Maybe he is on a mission somewhere to get something to fight Superman. We have no idea. Maybe he opens a portal, And if he did, then maybe Natalie is still alive and fighting on her own. But then I ask, why would Irons leave her? Because he tells her he'll be back.
Yeah.
So he knows where he was going. And this leads to that time gap. He says, I'll be back. So they were planning something. And she was working with him on that plan. And he leaves to go accomplish that plan. And he says, I'll be back. He didn't say like Arnold, I'll be back, but there is something there we haven't gotten yet. They planned something together, and he leaves. So, was it the crisis wave? Was it something else? Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. That's the gaps we're needing, because we need more to get that answer as to what he was planning to do or hoping to do, and then what was that he's flying into, because when he was flying, did he really look shocked or surprised? He kind of looked like he kept programming things in and like trying to move the joystick farther forward. Let's go, room. Let's like it's like he knew what he was doing flying into it. So, unless he's smart enough and he, with all his technological know-how, he figured out what the crisis was and that it was coming and that he could get through it.
It's a confusing scene. It leads to a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Clearly,
It does.
I want more info.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question I got for you guys. You guys mentioned it early on already. He deletes the Luthor profile and creates his own, and then drives off into the sunset in his RV. Do you think we're not going to see him for a while now? Is that kind of like he's gone for a couple episodes, and we're going to deal with Edge and all that stuff for a bit? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think next week's episode title, is talking about the subjects. And so I think definitely we're going to spend some time building that aspect of the story up.
Right.
And I think as we get to the end of the season, I think that's when we're going to see, towards the end, when we're going to see him come back, because we're going to need that combined strength to fight off these subjects. So I think that they've done a good job of kind of building up some stuff, and they built up with Luthor, and they've done this in waves. They build up with Edge, and they build up with Luthor, and then So I think we're going to have a couple episodes, until maybe the towards the end before we see him again.
Yeah, maybe he goes off to work with the AI to build defenses and stuff and build weapons and whatever. Maybe he's got to think. Obviously, he's got to think. Lois made him stop from killing Superman, so maybe he's got to figure a few things out too.
Yeah, I definitely think he needs to regroup a little bit, and I think we'll kind of see him trying to figure out his new plan, since his old one kind of got turned on its head a little bit.
Right. All right.
All right. On to Morgan Edge, and I was wondering, I couldn't remember, was it Flash or was it Harley that was talking about transferring souls? And it was Harley.
That was me. So we get the crazy reveal that Edge is transferring, quote, alien sentience into human hosts. Totally nuts.
That's crazy. So I got questions here. We have no answers for anything that Edge knows. What was that stone that he tracked during the meteor shower and grabbed? What was that? That's the stone that he's using. So that thing has Kryptonian sentience in it that you can suck out and give to other people. Like I don't even understand how that works. But my bigger question is, how does he know about it? It's a rock falling from the sky. How does he know it's from Krypton? How does he know it has sentience? And how does he know to go after it? There's more questions about Edge than anything else this season right now. Because that, to me, I cannot connect the dots for that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because we've got the X-Kryptonite, which gives powers, but it seems like there's this extra step of having the Kryptonian intelligence. So it's kind of like a two-part, but it's not like quite full, because we've seen the subjects still kind of know who they are. It's not like, or at least maybe the Kryptonian intelligence has access to their knowledge and personality. So it seems like there's a two-part process, but it makes me wonder if Edge is fully transferring the Kryptonians over. How is he going to build in controls to be in control? Because he's doing this to have power and strength and combat Superman. Well, if you've got people who have Superman's abilities and he can't control them, what's the good in that? So, like you said, Flash, lots of questions.
Well, and the only thing I keep coming back to is that he's got to have something on them for them to follow him and obey his orders. That's all I can think of, whether it's a kill switch or I can reverse the process and I just don't know. There's got to be something on that he has on them. Yeah. We've got to figure out what all that is, how the stone works, how can you infuse a human with a Kryptonian sentient being. And I mean, because we saw that lady that came in to ask Lana to find her son, and then her son shows up and he's completely not himself, so it's obvious that he can behave like her son, but it's not her son that's inside anymore. It's really weird. So
well, I don't know about the control question of like how would he control them, or how does he get the army to like obey him, but I do have a little bit of a theory on like the how. So I mean, John Henry Irons is not originally like from our Earth, but ends up on our Earth. So maybe Edge is the same situation. Maybe this Edge isn't unique to our Earth, and that's how he knew where everything was, and that he knew when the Kryptonian little, I don't know, it looked like a very tiny version of a spaceship. So it was somehow carrying like, I mean, we postulated DNA, we postulated like some version of like a soul, so to speak, some way to take this sentience and put it into someone else, like as if it's like cryo frozen in like little test tubes or something in this little spaceship that he knew exactly where it was going to be and when. So that's the only theory I have to answer that.
The multiverse exists, so I mean he could have come over from a different Earth. So,
or someone's in league with him. Someone else came over and is working with him and gave him all the information. Maybe there's a Brainiac at play somewhere in the background. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good to have these mysteries because it gives us longevity on the show to learn and figure these things out. So it's hopefully it doesn't go the way of Lost, where we get some great answers, but a lot of stuff never gets answered. So let's see what they do, right?
Way to bring up Lost, Flash. So controversial.
Hey, I loved Lost. I'm one of the Lost fans that really loved the finale. So
I didn't hate it, but I did not love it.
It was a tough one. I didn't know how else they could end it, but that's another podcast.
That's a good God, yes, that is an entirely different podcast.
Maybe we'll have to have you on Cybercast and discuss Lost Part 2. I already had a Lost discussion with a friend on there.
Yeah, you would need like an entire podcast, which there are already entire podcasts devoted to Lost rewatches and all of that. So, anyways, moving on.
How about we get to our favorite scenes? That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shape out an eagle!
All right, you know what? We're loaded up on favorite scenes because this episode was so dang good. I just couldn't pick one.
Jeff and I stuck to one.
Well, you guys picked two really good ones, and you left. X-Force left one open saying, I really want to talk about this, but you might pick it. And I ended up picking it. And we're going to talk about it here. But then there's another one I wanted to use because I thought you guys one of you would have picked it and you didn't. So I was like, we can't leave this one hanging out. There's just too much good stuff here. And I think when you have an episode where all three of us gave it a minimum of 9.5, we've got to play the best parts that happen in this episode. So we're going to go in chronological order as they happen so it can build up the emotions as if we're watching it again. And we're going to start with one of mine. And this was when Lois loses it on Jonathan in the kitchen. It is a hard scene, but it's Bitsy's performance and Jonathan's reaction. It's just, yeah. Anyway, here it is.
Are you out of your mind? You don't go snooping around some guy from another world's murder van.
I mean, I thought it was safe earlier.
Jonathan, nothing is as it seems with this kind of stuff.
I said I would go back in there with you. What were you thinking?
I just thought I'd look around.
Without me? Jonathan, what were you really doing in there?
Mom, even I knew how upset you were earlier about what we saw in there. And then that crazy hammer thing that he made, I thought that maybe I could go in there and I could look for...
Whoa, hang on. You were looking for weapons?
Dad, you and Jordan basically are weapons. I am the only one in this house that is completely unarmed.
Jonathan, your mother and I will protect you.
Really?
Yes.
Because I was 1 second away from being dead. And Mom couldn't do anything. And you almost didn't even make it in time.
Jonathan, look at me. Look at me! I let you come with me because I trusted you. I trusted that you were responsible enough to know what's at stake, to know how dangerous this all is.
So now you don't trust me?
Okay, let's calm down.
You knew there was a risk. I know you did, and yet you went in anyway, alone, behind my back. But to find weapons? You almost died. Not because you were unarmed, because you were reckless and stupid. And if you had died, the only person that would have been to blame is yourself. Get out of my face!
Okay.
Oh my God, that just that got me all teared up again. That's just so powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. Like she nailed losing it, and the fact, if you listen to it too, even though she loses it, she is trying so hard to control herself from saying too much or going too far, and as it builds up, she eventually cracks, and just, I mean, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Give that woman an Emmy right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that scene leads directly into mine, which I called "It's Okay to Ask for Help."
Are you okay?
I'm fine, Clark.
Okay. I'm gonna mark that as a no.
He could have been killed.
I know, and it was scary, and I don't know, do you think maybe you were like a little harsh? Do you want to talk about what you saw in the RV earlier?
I said, I'm fine, Clark.
Okay. Look, I know you can handle anything, but it is okay to ask for help. And I want to be that person for you always, but I also understand if I'm not right now. What about the woman you talked to before? Your dad's friend?
Dr. Wiles.
She's still at the DOD. Like, just think about it. I'm gonna check on Jonathan.
I absolutely love the fact that Clark may be Superman, but he knows he can't always be who Lois needs. And he wants her to get help and find the help that she needs. And I appreciate that he is bringing up positive solutions and ways for her to talk when he can't be that person. So I absolutely love how he is reacting and being there for her and getting her the help that she needs, even if it's not him. So I love that.
And you know what else I loved is in the beginning of your clip there, he's treading on thin ice with her. He's like, oh my God, she is mad. I better be careful of what I say right now. He's like, okay, do you think you should maybe calm down? Like, he's scared of her in that moment. I was like, oh my God, this is Superman, and he's like, be careful.
I can so identify with Lois in that scene in so many ways. So many ways. It was a great scene. Very good scene.
Yeah, everything about these scenes is just... All right, Harley, you're up.
Yeah, so continuing on, I chose the scene, well, one of the scenes that was with the therapist. It's about halfway through the episode, and it's the one where we actually get the reveal about her daughter at the end. I mean, it was a huge plot point, so we've kind of already talked about it, but now we can listen to it.
Well, and with your scene, it's actually split up a couple times because it keeps jumping from her stuff with the doctor to scenes back at the DOD, so I kind of combined a couple of them so that it flows through nicely.
Sure.
And it plays out a little bit better. So here's your stuff.
Honestly, it's a miracle he's alive.
Sounds like whatever happened, it scared you.
You have no idea. It's like it's hard enough being a parent, raising them and caring for them, and then they get old enough and just a part of you is just out in the world. Like, your heart is just out there and anything can happen to it and there's nothing you can do.
Sounds like you felt helpless, powerless.
Not like I have in a long time.
I'm sure. Probably not since your miscarriage.
You helped me a lot back then.
You only came the once.
Losing my job is kind of hard enough making time for my family. And miscarriages are pretty common.
Common, yes, but they can also be traumatic. And as I recall, you already had a name picked out.
We were gonna name her after my grandmother. Natalie. Look, I get how important it is to grieve the loss. I read all the books, all the websites. I'm just one of those people that copes better when there's more on my plate, not less. It helps me focus.
I just wonder, given the emotions you describe and the way you reacted to Jonathan, if you needed more time to process your grief.
I used my vacation days. I allowed myself the time.
Lois, why did you yell at Jonathan?
He put himself in danger.
That's why you lost control.
I told you he scared me.
That's it? Nothing else?
What else do you want me to say? That he was only there because of me, and that if he had gotten hurt or worse, it would have been because of me? I can't lose another child because of me.
Lois, we respond to grief in many ways, but you have to realize this...
Is this the part where you tell me the miscarriage wasn't my fault? Because the guilt that I feel is real. I never stopped working.
Work, exercising, having sex, lifting something heavy, that's not why you lost your child.
You don't know that.
A majority of miscarriages are caused by a genetic issue.
Yeah, I know, but...
Lois, you have control over your life in a way most don't. But the things you can't control, you have to learn to accept them and let them go. Your miscarriage wasn't because of something you did or didn't do. It was something that happened to you.
I was so excited to meet her.
I wish there was a shortcut. But you have to allow yourself to go through the grieving process, no matter how much time it takes. Because when you don't...
Yeah, I know. I saw what can happen when you don't.
Yep, she gets me. She hits hard. Look out. I've found a new favorite actress out of these TV shows. That's crazy. When you can get to the emotions like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's just so powerful, and it's just so... Like I said, it is very brave of them to do that and bring out and just really empower folks that have gone through that. So I really appreciate it. So
Yeah, it's definitely a tough subject to talk about, for sure. They did it well.
Well, let's wrap it up with a it's not a fun one, but this is a better scene. That it equally tugs at the emotions, but it's a good moment. And it's the one where Lois sits Jonathan down on the couch and tries to reconcile with him and bring those two back together, because they essentially had a falling out this episode. and we weren't sure what was going to happen to the relationship. And this scene at the end was so needed, and I'm glad that it came right away and it didn't stretch out many episodes. It just it just shows the strength of this family, that when something happens, they immediately work on it together and they immediately try to come back together. They don't let stuff fester and build and whatever. They're just that's what this show is so good at. Why it's so strong is because the strength of this family, it takes Superman out of it. The family themselves is super, and it's so here's that scene with them on the couch.
When you and your brother were about 18 months old, I got pregnant. I ended up losing the baby, so it's really not something I talk about much. We were gonna name her Natalie. Yeah, exactly. All this time I thought I was okay. And then I'm just being reminded of the child that I lost, and then almost losing you. I lost it. And I said some things I never should have said and that I didn't mean. That's no excuse, and I never should have yelled at you like that. And I'm so sorry, and I love you so much, and I hope you forgive me.
Oh, it's okay. I understand.
Promise me you will never go rogue on me like that again.
I just want to help.
John, if there's anyone in this family who gets what you're going through, it's me. I know what it's like to be in the orbit of someone who can juggle semi-trucks. And you want to help out, you want to save the world, and all you can do is just stand there, holding the wrench. And I know the fear of being vulnerable, and I will teach you some ways to handle that. But right now, I just want you to know that we're on the same team. We are the extraordinary humans in a family of super people. And we have to stick together.
The extraordinary humans in a family of super people. I mean, that just rung so true to me when I heard that, and I was like, I hope Flash chooses that one. Because I was like, I've already chosen one, but if I was going to choose another one, because that just, I mean, they are just having to deal with that, and I love that she's going to teach him techniques and things like that. I just loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, they got Sappy Flash to come out this episode. Holy cow. All three scenes teared me up again.
Yeah.
And I'm not even watching it, I'm just listening to it. I'm such a sap. Well, I got a bonus one here because it's fun. It's such a good episode. There was a moment here when I so loved Kyle's character, and he's got a line in here that I think is a piece of advice that we can all keep in mind in our own lives. And I'll play the clip, and then we'll talk about it again.
It feels like I have this weight on my chest.
If that feeling of wanting to sing is greater than that fear of getting up there, well, then you gotta try it. I mean, the fear is just short pain. Regret, that lasts a lot longer.
Just that right there. Fear is a short pain, regret lasts a lot longer. That is something that hits home so true, and it's something I wish we could impose on everybody, all of our listeners, to keep that in mind and in your heart, because you don't want to come to the end of your life and regret things that you never did or made a choice or never said to somebody, whatever kind of thing. It's just, regret is huge, and it's that one really hit hard. Whew, all right, now, while we go get some tissues and clean ourselves up and get ourselves back together, you guys can listen to this clip about how to support the show on Patreon.
If you'd like to support our podcast, you can do so at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/tomorrowslegends.
And we're going to take that right into feedback. Let's do that.
If you don't dial, it will cry like a violin. Feedback.
Yes. All right, I'm going to take the short one here. This is another Facebook message from Faith McQuinn. And she says, every single episode has been amazing. None of the normal tropes of family drama are here, and I love it. Easily the best show the CW has put out in a long while, and this is coming from a diehard Supernatural fan. Good stuff as always. And Harley, I'm letting you read Dad L. I don't think you've had a chance to read Dad L yet this season, so take him away.
Sounds good. Hello, Superfam. Well, I don't know where to begin since this is possibly the best DC CW episode ever made.
Whoa. Yeah.
Oh, wait. Let me give my rating. 11. Yes, 11 tear-filled eyes. Took it to 11.
See, we need a bigger scale. You're right.
Every actor in this episode brought their A+ game, but Bitsy Tulloch brought her A++++ game. I think I got all the pluses. I know she connected with every parent who watched this episode in a way I have never seen on TV before. Yes. And Jordan Elsas, who plays Jonathan, was also stellar. And yes, isn't it something that the actor is named Jordan Elsas?
Jor-El is capitalized? Yeah.
I'm fairly certain that the actor joked about that on Twitter in one of the earlier episodes, and it was pretty funny. The moments between these two actors were award-worthy. Yes, they were. The best Superman moment of this episode was when General Lane told him, if you go down there, you may not come back alive. Superman just gently nods and is gone in the blink of an eye. I stood up and cheered. John Henry Irons has hit the road. I suspect he will be building his SEAL suit and return to help our heroes in the fight against Morgan Edge. There we go.
Yep.
Last week, I wondered how our heroes would trust Irons. Got that answer quickly with the images from the RV. But the writers know how to hold just a little bit back to keep the story going. Jonathan knows the darkest secret from the alternate Earth. How will our family react when they learn of this? I have declared this show the best live-action Superman incarnation. It is quickly becoming the best DC CW show ever made as well. Dad L, Last Father of Krypton.
You're here, Dad L. I think we're all with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And aren't we lucky that we get to podcast about it?
Yes.
So, question then. The darkest secret, I'm assuming he means Superman burning Lois.
Yes.
On their Earth. Does Lois and R. Clark not know that yet? Did they not know the extent of what happened?
I don't think Lois does. I can't remember if Irons revealed that to Superman or not.
I think he did.
Yeah.
In this episode. But I don't know that she necessarily knows. Maybe she knows, but not to the extent of how... I mean, there's knowing that it happened, but then there's seeing it and hearing it like he did on the screen. That's totally different. So
yeah, I think you're right. Irons does tell Superman that he killed her, and I think she knows it. She just hasn't seen it. I don't think either of them saw the footage. They're just believing what Irons tells them, that you killed her on my planet. That was part of it. Yeah. Cool stuff. Yeah, we're right there with you, Dad L. 11 out of 10, definitely. Why not? That brings us to a voicemail from Perry White.
Hello, Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11. It's your intrepid reporter friend here, Perry White, for feedback for Superman and Lois's episode, Holding the Wrench. Holy freaking wow, what an episode. And what an incredibly powerhouse performance from one Elizabeth Andrea Bitsy Tulloch. Her performance legit deserves Emmy consideration. If she doesn't get Emmy consideration for this performance, you can just pretty much say that those awards are fraudulent.
Yeah.
She was engaging. She was emotional. She was compassionate. She was angry. She was everything in this episode. I don't know that I can say enough, so I guess I'll just stop there. One of the things that was really inspiring to me about this episode was just, we always talk about the character of Superman, and particularly going back to the Man of Steel movie, and just sort of every iteration of Superman, there's always a talk about how he is an ideal for humanity. He's something to strive for. Well, what I really love and enjoy and appreciate about this show is that they not only make Superman an ideal, they make the family ideal. They make the Kent family an ideal to strive for. And no, it's not because they are a perfect family, and obviously they would be the first ones to tell you that they're not perfect. But they are an ideal to shoot for because of the emotional maturity that everyone in this family seems to exhibit. Even when you have a bunch of teenagers who in most situations could be whiny characters that you're just sort of waiting to get through their scene so you could get to something next. But no, I mean, everyone in this family has a sense of maturity and compassion and love for one another that it's certainly an ideal that we should all strive for. I mean, take one of the first interactions that Clark had with Lois right after she blew up at Jonathan. He knew she wasn't okay, and ideally he wanted to fix it, which is what most, if not all, husbands want to do. But he also understood that, hey, this isn't something that I can fix, but it needs to be addressed. So he told Lois, I'd love to be the one to fix it, but I understand that I can't. And then referring her to a therapist who is able to sit with Lois and get to the bottom of what was bothering her. I mean, in most other situations, that could have been a husband and wife blow up. In this situation, the relationship that Lois and Clark have, they were just able to get to trying to fix the situation without letting egos and that sort of thing get in the way. And that's an ideal of husband and wife that we should all strive for, right? And then let's look at the characters, the two brothers. Again, like I said, in most situations, most TV shows, these would probably be characters who would be at each other's throats. And to be honest, with everything that these two have been through, I mean, it would sort of be justified if they were at each other's throats and sort of had this antagonistic relationship. But here you have Jonathan, who I like to say is the sort of Miles O'Brien character of this show, because if you're familiar with Star Trek, particularly DS9 more than anything else, you are probably familiar with the phrase that Miles must suffer. And by that, I mean, if there was something bad or terrible that was going to happen to a character, it was going to be Miles O'Brien, and he had to work through whatever it was going to be. They put him in the worst circumstances and the worst situations you could possibly imagine, and he came out better for it. And so I say that to say that basically they are putting Jonathan through the mill in this series. And on the surface, you would think, well, he looks like he can take it, right? He still seems to be, in most situations, not necessarily a happy-go-lucky kid, but on the surface, he looks like he's handling it well. Until you realize, until his character lets you in on the fact that he's not. And he needs Lois, and more importantly, he needs his brother. And he was vulnerable enough to go to his brother and say, hey, I need you. And his brother didn't blow him off. mean, that's a level of maturity and compassion and brotherly love that it's an ideal that any family would shoot for, which is why I say that the Kent family, much like Superman most often and on his own, is an ideal to shoot for, and I really love the way that this show demonstrates that. Like I said, I give this episode a 9.99. The only reason that I don't give it a 10 was because of the Sara Cushing storyline. And it's not that I didn't like it, it's not that I didn't appreciate it, but it just took away from some of the more powerful moments in this episode, whether it was Lois dealing with what she had to deal with, whether it was Clark, Superman, having to deal with John Henry Irons, and more importantly, having to come to grips with who and what Sam Lane is. I just would have preferred spending more time with those stories than I did with Sara's story. And although I say that, there were some really good points in Sara's story that I liked. And I mean, obviously she has a really good singing voice, and obviously the actor who's played in Jordan, and I forget his name, but obviously he has incredible talent on the piano as well. And so obviously getting an opportunity for them to demonstrate that, it got sort of shoehorned into this episode, and I don't want to say it didn't fit. I just wasn't as interested in that as I was everything else. But what I was interested in regarding Sara's story was the conversation, well, the two conversations. The first one that she had with Kyle when he was talking about giving her the confidence to go and give singing a try at this talent show, particularly when he was talking about regret, and you could just see the regret and the loss that he had on his face, and obviously trying to make sure that Sara realizes that she needs to take advantage of opportunities and don't live with regrets. And I thought that was incredibly powerful. It was really good acting on behalf of the guy who's playing Kyle. The other scene that I really appreciated with Sara was the second scene that she had with Kyle, when obviously he was disappointed in Lana, and obviously went to his default mode, which is to go off and drink and blow off steam, and ultimately that led to him letting down Sara. And obviously she was upset with him, and she had every right to be. But what I also appreciated was the fact that she just didn't totally blow up in his face. She just said, hey, quit making promises to me, because you've proven that you don't follow through on them. And it was sort of a muted disappointment that she exhibited, and it was palpable, and it hit Kyle right in the heart. And I think that's more impactful than just a teenager having a screaming fit. I think that was a really good writing decision and directing decision to have her be disappointed and to demonstrate the disappointment in the way that she did. Of course, with all that being said, I still take off a 1/10 of a point, only because I just wasn't as interested in that storyline as I was in the other ones. And I'll also say, going back to Lois in this episode, when she had the opportunity to go into John Henry Irons' murder van, which is an absolute great nickname for what he's been driving around in. But seeing the life that he led and the loss that he has, and obviously realizing on his earth that they had the daughter that she didn't have here, and obviously that goes into triggering all of the drama and trauma that she exhibited in this episode, and it's just so incredibly well done in terms of how they told the story, how they directed it, how they visualized it. It was just so freaking good. I think it goes without saying that obviously Superman and Lois is the standard bearer for the Arrowverse, and to be honest, right now there is nothing that's even close, probably until Stargirl comes back. Is again, going back to something Martin said, this show isn't great because it puts a lot of money into its special effects and to its costuming and things of that nature. This show is great because it has a really good cast, it has really good writing, it has really good direction, and everyone is doing a bang-up job. Now, certainly it would be nice if you had the financial backing to support all those things, but this show proves that it's not the flashy things that make it great. It's the quiet moments, it's the subtle moments, it's the nuance. It's those things that make this show great, and it's why I love it. And right now, it's my favorite Arrowverse show, easily. This feedback was a little bit longer than most, but I guess I had a lot to say. Here it is, Perry White meeting this deadline one more time. I cannot wait to see what happens with the next episode, with the coming of Morgan Edge's Kryptonian Human War. I wait for each episode with bated breath, and I hope everyone else does too, and that's a sign of a great show. I'm out.
That is a sign of a great show, and I'm glad you're basically just highlighting what I already said, and that you agree with me, Barry. That is very cool. It is the soft stuff, the in-between stuff, not the flashy effects that are making this show great. But he brought up a scene that we never mentioned during our discussion. That was when Jordan went in to support Sara at the audition, that Jonathan comes running in and needs his brother. He's like, I know you're busy, but I need your help. Crap happened to me, and I got nobody but you. You're the only one I have here. And I needed, and Jordan's just like, yeah, whatever it is, I'm here for you, boy. And again, just another cool moment, which finally was reversed. Finally, Jonathan was in some type of, mental distress, and he needed his brother, and Jordan was able to just step up to the plate and be there for him. And that was a great, another tiny little moment, but so powerful for those two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I have to say there, Carrie, at the very beginning of your feedback, when you're like, holy I thought something else was coming out when you said freaking. I was like, ooh, where's the beep button? Good stuff, good stuff. As always, last up, we got a voicemail from Dreamweaver.
Hey, Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11. Dreamweaver here with some slightly different feedback this week. This was another excellent episode, and somehow so effortlessly weaved such humanity into each storyline and aspect of the story that was happening this week. So much so that when at the end of the episode Lois is apologizing and talking to Jonathan about everything and how she understands the feeling of helplessness, by explaining to John that it's like all you can do is hold a wrench, which was the episode title, but was set up fully with only visual cues in the first scene fixing the truck. That you have no problem connecting the two and knowing exactly what she's talking about. And all I have to say to that is wow. To that kind of writing, just wow. There was so much good in this episode, but what I really want to take a moment to talk about is how they dealt with the subject of trauma and therapy. They decided to not only open the episode with Lois showing up to therapy, but we also see her nerves about it, about opening up, and we continue to see hints of that deflection and nervous tics, like her quip about needing new chairs, throughout the whole thing. But then continue to see how hard it can be to open up, but how important it is to get to the roots of everything, even if it's been years and you feel as though you've dealt with those issues. Sometimes you haven't. And I think this was incredibly important to see out of Lois, not just for the story setup within the show, but also for people to see. Lois, whether this is someone's first encounter with her character, or if you're aware of her vast history and different iterations, is known and is set up as a very headstrong, fearless, intrepid reporter with gumption in both book and street smarts. And to have a character who's set up and shown as that capable, to also be able to show the vulnerability and her struggle with asking for help and showing that she copes with overworking, with putting more things on her plate, is incredibly important and I think freeing for a lot of people. To show both sides, and more importantly, showing both as a strength, with of course their own shortcomings, but having each is a natural balance, and it's so good and refreshing to see. And Lois having this session, this experience of facing the trauma and the pain and having to accept the truth about it, and the understanding that came from that is what ultimately saved the day. No powers, no physical super strength, but the kind of human strength that is available to all of us if we face those fears and face those truths. And that's so powerful to see. We live in a world of television and films that unfortunately love to put therapy into certain tropes and boxes. It's seen as ominous, or it's used completely as a joke, or to make characters feel gaslit or manipulated, or they will even make a therapist evil and a villain just to use it as a gotcha plot twist kind of a thing, and that drives me up a wall. I've turned episodes of TV off because of that. Depression, anxiety, therapy, portraying mental health, and getting help for mental health is a very important topic to me and very close to home. And I've said it before that I wanted to see the show do justice to those topics since they brought them up so early on. And they're doing it. They're doing it respectfully. There's tons of genres out there and different niches and interests and likes, and I know there are shows and movies that are just dramas out there that deal with these kind of subjects regularly and well. But I typically tend to gravitate to certain genres, like sci-fi, fantasy, supernatural, things like that, especially when there's just so much content out there. And I think it's really important that shows like this, especially that sci-fi and has superpowers, deal with these kind of topics, and do so within the context and betterment of the story that's been set up. I think it's important that this kind of storytelling is available and reaching different demographics, and not just saved for typical dramas or genres based in just real life. That the headstrong individuals who are here for the action and the superpowers can see and understand the vulnerable strength of being human. And to those on the other side of that coin as well, who have always found their draw to superheroes and the wonder of fictional worlds through the lens of understanding humanity better, and have that confirmation as well within this kind of writing. And as I said, mental health topics are really important to me. I'm in therapy now, I've been going to counseling for years, and I'm not shy about that. Between this episode this week and another one of my shows that had their season finale this week that did an absolutely beautiful job of using the supernatural to show how deep we can bury our traumas and what it means to recognize those broken pieces of ourselves, plus some things I've been digging up in my own therapy session this week, it's been a very cathartic and reinforcing time to reflect on just everything and why I got into filmmaking and why I'm a storyteller and think story is one of the most elemental and powerful things in this world. I became a writer and a storyteller because what is storytelling if not the ability to try to understand ourselves and the human condition, despite and in spite of our own traumas and broken pieces? Using writing as a way to explore and heal. I see fiction, sci-fi, fantasy as vehicles to interpret our own realities, to wrench, actual no pun intended, ourselves out of our own heads and realities of which we tend to do the same thing Lois does and deflect and bury it down, and show these topics in a different world, a different setting, a reality where we can use the hyperbole of superpowers and the supernatural to visually and more easily recognize these shadow parts about us and thread together a better understanding of ourselves. Giving all these things we deal with names and faces and situational relations, and being able to use those fictional worlds and characters as reflections to then bring back into our own lives. For us to be able to heal and deal with those now that we do have names and now we can recognize those things just in a different sense. And that's why I write. That's why I got into filmmaking. And that's how I view what magic really is. So those are my thoughts this week, a little bit different than normal, but just the way this show has been dealing with those kind of topics, even with the scenes with Jordan and Sara, and her showing that she can cause herself to get sick because of the anxiety, even if it's something she loves to do. And just all those little moments is why I keep showing up for these characters, not just this show, but other ones that I've been fully attached to. like Lost. Lost dealt with this in such an incredible way to me, putting them on a literal island to deal with all these things, because in reality, me showing up for these characters every week, me showing up for these storylines, it's really me showing up for myself and trying to understand myself better. So that's all for now, and until next time, your slightly existential friend, Dreamweaver.
I have to say, I think Dreamweaver is pretty inspirational herself, because I've talked to her quite a bit behind the scenes. She's become a friend now, and she's not someone who's very out there with her feelings and her emotions like that. So for her to come to us with feedback and be able to express like that, you know, and I'm sorry if I'm maybe describing you wrong, Dreamweaver, but that's just the feeling I get from you, that you did. I'm very proud of you for coming on here and be able to talk about topics like that and just be wide open about it and express how this show and these characters are connecting to you in a way that really means something, and then describing the show, you know, with your own experiences of how well this show is doing at dealing with these mental issues like no other superhero show does. And that's the point that I think was really strong that you made, is that you've got people coming on the show. It's a show about comic books and superheroes and powers and boom, bang, slam, bam, Batman, you know, and yet here's this family story at its heart, and the powers and the effects are all secondary to everything that's going on with this family. And the fact that this show can weave in something as critically important as mental health and get us all to feel, even the people that only come here for the superpowers watch and go, holy, I didn't know that could happen, or I didn't know someone could feel that from whatever. Like, it's amazing. You are far better at words than I am, Dreamweaver, and I cannot wait to see where your career takes you when you get to tell your own stories and you get to put something up on screen, because I can already sense it in your words to us that you've got some stories to tell, and you're going to be amazing at it.
Yeah, agreed. And I totally agree with what she put forth of the whole purpose of any form of genre is telling a human story, but using different tools and different devices. And so it's nice to see, like she said, sci-fi dealing with these human issues. And we've talked about Bitsy deserving awards. I really hope that the critics see the worth and the value and the human conditions being addressed in shows of different genres more readily, because it's being shown so well here, and I'm glad that we're bringing so many issues and so many things to light in such a great way, and I just love it. So thank you, Dreamweaver.
Awesome stuff all around, guys. Really, really excellent feedback as always. It's funny, Superman Lois is bringing out the best in feedback out of all our shows. But it's funny. I think the overarching thoughts and feelings were after this one is that Superman is now the leader of the CW. I think that's where everyone is agreeing, and it's fun to hear. So awesome stuff. Well, we would love to still hear from more of you out there and get the rest of you guys on the show to talk about what you think of Superman Lois and how the show is handling everything. And to do that, follow this.
If you would like to be a part of the show, you can send in your feedback to Tomorrow's Legends Podcast at gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at Tomorrow's Legends. We'd love you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/Tomorrow's Legends and become part of the community.
Whew. All right, that wraps up a tour de force of emotions and drama. That was good, though. Wow, that was good. I'm very, very happy with our luck in getting to cover the show and the three of us together. It's just, I'm really, really enjoying this season and being with you guys here for it.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's a great season so far.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we're still going strong. Do you guys know the name of the next week's episode?
It's something about subjects.
It's subject spelled with a K instead of a C.
Yeah, S-U-D. And that's what LAR has used in the closed captioning. When they mention subjects, it's spelled differently than I would expect. So
K probably for Kryptonian, which yeah, interesting. Cool. Well, we'll have to see where they go with this sidestep in the storyline and take us on a different 3 or 4 episode arc. We'll see what they do.
Yep.
Everybody have a good weekend. This is The Flash, signing off.
This is Harley Quinn. I'm out.
And this is X-Force 11. So say we all.
Tomorrow's Legends is not affiliated with CBS, Warner Brothers, or the CW. We're a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only and are part of the Cybercast Network.